Thank you for joining us. My name is Maria Victoria Langman, and I am the Communications Officer for the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies in the Americas Regional Office. We have been doing a series of interviews with the Resilient Islands team, which is the Resilient Islands Project is a 4-year initiative designed to protect islands against the impacts of climate change by promoting the use of coastal habitats to reduce risks. The RA project is being implemented by the IFRC and the Nature Conservancy in 3 countries, Grenada, the Dominican Republic, and Jamaica. Today, we're going to be chatting with the RI policy team members. We have with us today Ms. Samantha Dickinson, President of the Grenada Red Cross Society, Ms. Jessie Jordan from the IFRC Disaster Law, and Ms. Natania Lumen from the Nature Conservancy. Thank you for being here today and joining us in this conversation. We are going to be starting today asking a question to Jessie. Let's start with you. Why a project like Resilient Island chooses to integrate a policy component as an integral part of implementation?
Okay, so if you think about the really overarching aim of the Resilient Islands project, which is to, promote the use of ecosystems, as you said, like mangroves and coral reefs to reduce disaster risk and adapt to climate change, you know, we need laws and policies that would create a framework or an infrastructure that will allow us to really mainstream the use of ecosystems to do that to reduce disaster risk and adapt to climate change. So it is essential really to have favorable laws and policies in place to have those actions and to be able to take actions in that regard.
Great. Jessie, can you tell us a little bit more about what are the main policy goals of this project?
Right. So, again, thinking about, what is the overarching goal, and the overarching goal really is to advocate for strengthening, laws and policies in disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. So, for the policy component, really, to meet this overarching objective, we our first goal really was to understand what is the legal and policy infrastructure that exists. We mapped out the laws and the policies to understand what were the strengths and what were some of the gaps so that we can make recommendations for improvement. And our second goal really was we didn't just want to have fancy recommendations. We wanted to be able to know how should we implement these recommendations. So the second goal was really to develop an action plan with a strategy that would help us to implement, you know, or advocate really for the implementation of recommendations based on our research. And the third goal we set for ourselves, we didn't just want to, do the research, make recommendations, have an action plan. We also wanted to ensure that we had the actual advocacy skills in order to, implement our action plan. So the Resilient Islands team engaged in legislative advocacy training, where we learned how to really understand what it takes to advocate for legislative change, how to develop a legislative advocacy strategy, and personally develop our own advocacy skills in our interactions with partners, with opposing partners, and also those we want to influence. So this was really were really the three main goals. Developing the research and recommendations, doing the action plan, and also the training.
Amazing. Thank you for telling us about those main goals that we had. I have a question now about what's been done in Grenada. Samantha, what would you say are the achievements so far in terms of policy and the impacts they've had in the communities in Grenada? We are taking kind of the legal part, the policy part, and we want to learn how it looks like implementing it in the communities of the project.
Yes, so thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to make some remarks on behalf of Grenada Red Cross Society. It's always a pleasure when we can share and learn in an effort to do what we do better, and in so doing, to reduce risk and save lives. So as it relates to the Resilient Island project and the exposure that it has had on us as a national society, the reflections that I'm having is, I would say, bottom up. So we work in communities where we are visible and we have the opportunity to advocate for change. And in so doing, once we change community and the way we do things, obviously it will trickle to the top and be able to influence policy. From the perspective of the National Society as well, we participated in those trainings that Jesse referred to. And so we now have a couple of volunteers more empowered and better positioned to be able to help the National Society develop these strategies to be able to advocate for the changes that we want to see. I recall a project being done, not a project, but a research piece being done back in 2017, I believe it was. And there were some recommendations that would speak to where we start and where we go and how we measure the things that we do. At the National Society, we begin to advocate the behaviors. So even the types of policies that we have on the ground up. And I recall just recently having to participate in project proposal writing to change our facility to a smart facility, for example, and how we utilize nature to give us the things that we need to have to do our work rather than depend and deplete on other resources. So from a National Society perspective, we have an improved capacity for one, and two, with that improved capacity, we ourselves have to be the examples in doing what we say we advocating to do.
Thank you for that answer. Now, Dania, we have the same question for you. What would you say are the achievements so far in terms of policy, and what impacts have they had in the communities of Jamaica in particular?
Thanks for that, Mario. Like both Samantha and Jesse would have stated, here at the Nature Conservancy, we also benefited from the training that the IFRC did in the legislative advocacy using their existing toolkit. The training provided us with a step-by-step guide as to how to initiate discussions on advocacy work, which is needed for advancing the policy work that we're doing. But it also helped us to develop an advocacy strategy, which now is a process, is systematic, is coherent, and it's an engaging process, which we've been able to use to bring the community members along with us. So what I should point out is that policy is usually at a national level, and at the community level, it's not so clear cut or dry. And most community members are not readily aware as to how they too could become a part of that process. However, through the advocacy training, we're able to engage the community members. We now refer to them as our allies because they're the ones on the ground experiencing these conditions, and they're also the ones that we're using to advocate for the change that we need, that is going to bring about the sustainability in our project. So we're able to use the training to guide the development of advocacy strategies. So we say we're co-creating these strategies with our allies, which would be persons from academia, civil society groups, community members themselves, and other NGOs who are also operating in this space. And through that, we're basically developing a strategy where we implement the roadmap that Jesse would have alluded to, one of the products that we've created so far. So for us, the success in Jamaica and in the community that we're working with is more the deliverable of these tangible products that we could use as guidelines and documents that are going to drive the change that we need. And it has the narrative that is used to inform those advocacy strategies that are going to come long after our project is gone. The gap analysis that was also done, it serves as a main document to guide other persons who are coming in into the space to have an idea what are those existing opportunities that exist for the infusion of EBA policies and NBS into the national landscape. So on both levels, both at a local level, community level, and the national level, we have products and tools that we've developed that could guide that discussion for us here in Jamaica going forward.
Thank you. It's impressive to see the work that the policy team has been doing and how it looks like on the ground. So thank you both for your interventions. Jesse, tell us please what remains to be done. How are you looking to the future in terms of the policy work that needs to be done for the Resilient Islands project?
So thanks so much, Maria. That's a really good question. And, in terms of what we've done so far, gathering the research, doing the recommendations, looking for opportunities to engage. Now, what remains to be done is really that advocacy work that never ends. So, what one of the things we're working on right now in Jamaica, and I think we would want to use this as a model for other countries, is really you know developing a communications action plan that reflects all of the work that we've done so far in terms of the research and the recommendations, so that we can now promote our work and sensitize the work we've done to public authorities, to our allies, to policymakers, so that we can hope to influence them, advocate to them for making change. And so this is really a point we're at, that has to, we really have to engage at this point. It's almost like, even though some of the work has ended, it's almost like it's now starting over again, because it continues. And so this is a new, I should say, a new era or a new stage in this work, which is really that advocacy work, taking our work now to those who can really make those changes.
Of course, it sounds like the hard part is coming, getting all the information that we've gathered, all the research that we gathered out there. Now I have a question for Samantha and Natania, and it is, in these two geographies, in Grenada and in Jamaica, what do you think will be the future in terms of policy? Samantha, we can start with you to learn more about Grenada, and then we'll go to Jamaica.
Yes, so like Jesse put it, the work has just begun. So with the introduction of a new policy or any kind of guideline or tools, it is left to be implemented and continuous evaluation. It may be relevant now, and then it has to be reviewed because in the future it may not be relevant anymore. And so for the Grenada Red Cross in particular, because of how we are positioned in community to work with communities, for communities, by communities, whatever we do out there as the Red Cross, the climate change, climate resilience, learning to use nature-based solutions, all those things has to be part of the language that we now speak. We have to mainstream them into everything that we do. So even if the Red Cross, for example, is known in relief work or is known doing first aid, how do we change our habits, one, to reflect in the programs that we do? And by developing these implementation activities, so to put it, how does that reflect in the language that we speak as well? And in so doing, change one life at a time, one step at a time, as we normally put it. Again, the Red Cross in its auxiliary role has an opportunity there to influence, as Jesse again mentioned, to influence our partners and stakeholders, to influence others to be able to make that kind of change at the policy level as we go forward doing what we do best.
Perfect. Nathania, can you tell us about the future in terms of policies in Jamaica? What do you think?
Right. I like the way Samantha articulated that there is no need for that action. So we've done all this work. Now we need to have it rolled out, but we also need ownership of it. It needs to become like the mainstay, the guiding process of everything we do going forward. For us, we're being guided by that communication action plan that Jesse referenced. So that plan for us shares different medium by which we're going to roll out the roadmap, as well as use that advocacy strategy that we've developed to basically drum up the support across all walks and avenues of life itself. But what we've also done is that we've made the products that we've developed available to everybody. We believe in sharing and we believe in getting that information out there because it's all good and well that we develop these fancy products and just put them on a shelf. They're not going to serve there. We now need to roll out. The person needs to be able to read and see how they too can contribute to this advocacy work. So we have made the products available via our website. Additionally, we also have incorporated the progress that we've done from the Resilient Islands project into another project that we're now working on here in TNC Jamaica, which is the Urban Resilience Project. It is with United Nations Environment Program. It's called City Adapt. So that project is now using that blueprint that we developed through the RI project to guide the development of policy briefs. But they're also going to take our products a step further. They're developing an upscaling strategy, and that strategy basically demonstrates how EBA can and should be incorporated into national strategic documents and frameworks, but it also provides illustrations as to how this type of work can be funded, which is addressing one of the gaps that we unearthed during RI is that there's a lot of time the work is needed, but where are the resources to get the implementation part of it done? So we're building on those lessons learned from RI and we're trying to get that incorporated under the UNEP project to illustrate how that could be funded and how it should be upscaled and mainstreamed into, everyday actions for community members, local government, and national level persons.
I think you mentioned something very important, incorporating it in everyday actions. We need to get empowered and we need to apply all this policy and all this research and knowledge that's being created and replicated and take it to different places and not just, it's not just for us at IFRC, at the Red Cross, at TNC. The knowledge being generated by the Resilient Islands program is um, for everybody to replicate, to learn more, and to make this world a little better. Which takes me to the next question and the last question that I have for the day, which is what has been the main lesson of this Resilient Island project for you guys? We can start in the order that we've been going. Jesse, we can start with you.
Great. So, you've heard me say it over and over again, this word advocacy. And advocacy is really something that is not a sprint, but a marathon. And that's definitely something we've learned. Um, and also that, there's a need for flexibility as well. Opportunities can pop up when you least expect it. And it's up to us to be flexible to see, okay, how can this work? How can I turn perhaps this challenge into an opportunity that I can use that can take my advocacy work a little further? And that's definitely something that I've learned through the Resilient Islands project. And, just being able to um, look for those opportunities and understand that advocacy, as Natanya alluded to, advocacy is something that happens every day. And it's not something that you can just put in a box, but it's something that, it becomes part of you. So that's definitely one thing that I've learned from the Resilient Islands project. Um, you know, just being flexible in that sense.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jesse, for sharing with us that lesson. Samantha, can you tell us what your lesson would be?
So I have an individual lesson, I have an organizational lesson, and then I have a
Great,
futuristic lesson. So the
great.
individual lesson is that I was fortunate enough to participate in the training. And I remember clearly how the elevator speech matters. And then I started practicing the elevator speech, and then I realized how impactful it has been on me as an individual. Because it's not just about being in the elevator, but you have to be the example in the elevator so that when you speak to that person in the elevator and you leave the person, you have them in that contemplatory mode going further up and wanting to be like that person that just left the elevator. So again, living by example matters. So it means that in leadership, we have to be the change. And so that in itself is advocacy. From an organizational perspective, at Grenada Red Cross, we are vastly looking towards doing things better, and equipping our offices with solar energy, thinking about the next vehicle that we would have. It's going to be electric, things like that. So recycling the rainwater that comes in. What can we do with it without opening the tap so often? And so it's the language of the office and it's the language of the volunteers. So if we change minds, obviously we change households. And if we change households, we're going to change the community. And in so doing, our advocacy message would have done what we intended it to do. And so, like I mentioned as well, in the auxiliary role, when we get around that table, we know that the work will continue and that we have to be the agents for change. And that's the simple lesson that it leaves with us. But I mean, we give credence to the Resilient Island Project because it is what empowered us. It is what helped us through resources to keep us in the community and to develop friendships and to recruit volunteers in the community that are now, they were beneficiaries maybe of the project, but now volunteers of the National Society. And then we would have changed minds and changed behaviors. And so in so doing, sustainability is going to be important so that in the long run, over time, we become a more environmentally sensitive community.
Great, amazing job. It's great to see that the job that the Grenada Red Cross is doing and how you've transformed those communities that you're working with. Danielle, can you tell us what your lesson would be?
Yeah. I agree with Jess's catchphrase, it's a sprint and not a marathon. And perhaps I'll just add a little bit more to it. For me, policy work is multidimensional and it takes time. Multidimensional means it transcends many borders, many regions, many countries, many languages, many sectors. And as such, it's important that we package it in a way for everybody to be able to understand what's my unique or individual role in this whole policy space and dialogue. And it's important for us to do that because even though climate change has been here and it's been here for over 10 years, at the individual household level, there are many persons who are still not aware as to how they can contribute and as to how they're being impacted. And policy is kind of like that for them. Policy is still considered something at a national level. They're not immediately aware as to how it impacts them and how they can impact policy. So it's important for us to understand the language that we're going to use to promote the policy work that we're doing for climate change, and that comes out in our advocacy strategy. So for me, that was the most important lesson to learn. Understand who your audience is, understand what their base is, and find a way using that elevator pitch to sell them the message, but also get them interested enough that they're going to come back to you, that source of knowledge, to ask, how too can I get involved in this? And how could I develop my message for my household, for my community, or for my parish? So for me, it's understanding that multidimensional link and using the language that everybody can understand and see how they can provide unique perspectives and contribution to get climate change knowledge and awareness out there and to help persons to begin to develop those adaptive strategies that they need, which is articulated in our policy work. But I think this partnership is something that I'd love to comment on as well. Bringing the largest NGO, humanitarian organization with the largest environmental nature-based organization together and having that cadre of persons that come behind each organization to come together to be that drive and to be that voice is something that we never anticipated would have been so grand at the start of this project. And to see how all our volunteers have come together, how us as staff have come together, and we've learned and we've grown, and we're now collectively sharing that message. And we're going greener, but we're also going red in the same aspect. But just to see that fusion of how it was done, especially during a period like COVID, where persons were locked away at home, us TNC couldn't go out, but the Red Cross could go out and deliver those hygiene and sanitation packages. And whilst they were doing that, they were still able to bring that climate change message out there because that's the bond that carried us to the community in the first place. And to be able to continue that work at the community level at a time when everybody was locked away and nobody was really interested in nature. But to have that unique partnership that continued that for us was like the best thing. That was the best lesson for me as well. Understanding the community language, meeting them where they are, and capitalizing on the partnerships that we could form, tapping into each company's, each organizational strength to serve the people and get that message out there for the people.
Thank you, Natania. It is, like you said, amazing that we could come together to create this project, to execute it, and to take the climate message out there in order to get to really be the change we want to see in the world. I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. I want to thank you also, Jesse, Samantha, Natania, for being here today, for sharing information on the Resilient Islands Project. And I want to thank you to everybody that joined the discussion. I want to leave you with more information about the project. You can follow the Grenada and the Jamaica Red Cross on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also follow TNC, the Nature Conservancy, on social media at nature_org, or you may visit nature.org. So you can visit their website, and you can also visit the IFRC website at ifrc.org and follow the IFRC and Cadron pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at IFRC_ES. And I think that's it for today. We hope to keep you updated and continue to have these great conversations full of knowledge. Thank you again for joining us, and let's remember that together, people and nature can work together to build community resilience and reduce the impact of climate change. Thank you all for joining us today.